Good afternoon. I'll be doing my presentation on the Great Recession, most recent one in 2007, 2009. And my topic, what we're going to discuss today is the underlying causes of the expansion recession during the time frame of 2007 to 2014, and analyze the economic conditions such as gross domestic product, inflation, and unemployment in the countries of U.S., Germany, and China. All right, so let's get started. What were the underlying causes of the financial crisis that we just recently had? This is a cartoon, best that I could describe it, and maybe it'll make sense once we go through this. But it all started out with Dan, the homeowner. Dan, right?
It's Evan.
Evan. Why do I call him Dan? Anyway, sorry, bro. Evan, the homeowner, and the investor, and the way that they were connected was through Zach, Wall Street. Go back a few years prior to 2001, and investors typically invested in the Federal Reserve, in the Treasury bills, which they had a high rate of return. Once the dot-com crash happened in 9/11, the Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan dropped the interest rates down to 1%. So the investors, they no longer saw that as a great investment, investing in Treasury bills. Okay, so they stopped doing it. What started happening was Evan's house over here started increasing at a ginormous rate, and Wall Street, Zach over here, saw an opportunity to get on board. And so what we had was these homes. Okay, you had a homeowner, you had a house equals mortgage, which was going up at a high rate of value, and you had Wall Street that wanted to take advantage of that low interest rate of 1% from the Federal Reserve. Okay, and they did so. They borrowed millions and millions of dollars. Okay, they borrowed these millions of dollars. They leveraged their money, and they dumped it all into the housing market. Okay, now at this time, the people that were buying houses are like you and me, like responsible people, right? People that could afford their mortgage, not less, per se, people that just want to buy a house and can't afford it and aren't responsible, per se, right? So what that's called is prime mortgages. These prime mortgages were for the responsible homeowners, like Evan. And what happened is here's a market of houses. Zach over here, all right, started investing in these homes, investing, and he invested in so many homes that the investors, their demand, they got hungry. They were like, yeah, keep investing. Well, eventually, there weren't any more responsible people buying homes. They were all bought out. So what happened was, who was left? The irresponsible people, per se, right? So the investors decided to make subprime mortgages. They said, you know what? Don't worry about credit reports. Don't worry about documentation, things like that. Just lend the money out to them, because we know these houses over here, they're just going up in value. And we want to jump on board, and we want to buy and we want to get as many mortgages as we can. Is that making sense? All right. Anyway, so they start lending money out. They start lending this money out. People start buying homes. Subprime mortgages become a thing, and now you have responsible borrowers and irresponsible borrowers all in the same pot. This pot was being collected by the investors, who had pretty much all of Zach's mortgages. Okay, and Evan over here, the responsible homeowner, was making the payments through the mortgages, which the investor was getting as payment to pay off those loans. Okay? Well, sorry, Evan, but you just became a irresponsible homeowner and defaulted on your loan. Okay? Because you're no longer responsible, you're irresponsible. Okay? One of the ones that may have had the subprime rate, hey, it looked good, I could buy the house, they lent me the money, I never said I could afford it. His money, all right, no longer was going into the investor's pocket. What the investor said was, well, give me your house. And now the investor owns his house because Evan over here can't afford to pay his mortgage. So he defaults, he forecloses on his home, and the investor gets a house. Well, the investor's happy, right? I mean, a house or a payment, either one, it's a win-win because the housing market's going up. Okay, well, eventually, all of these houses, okay, start getting dried up, right? And then what happens? People start defaulting on their loans. This investor over here, who was happy about it, getting the money, no longer, he's not getting any money anymore. Now he has a home, okay, and all of that money that was coming in have turned to defaulted foreclosed homes. Okay, so now you've got a flood of foreclosed homes on the market. Okay, essentially. Anyway, to wrap things up, market goes dry, housing prices start to decrease. Okay. Wall Street's losing money because their investments were in the mortgages. Investors have nothing but a decreased investment now that's continuing to plummet. Okay. Even if you were that responsible home buyer at the time and you bought your home, say $300,000 you paid for your home, and you could afford it and you were making the payments. You look to your left, you look to your right, and I said, I see Evan over here defaulted on his home, and now he's got a foreclosed sign in his yard. Zach over to my right has a foreclosed sign in his yard, and they're all down the block. I'm not going to make my payments anymore either. Why? My home price is going down. It's now worth $90,000, not $300,000. So you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to make my payments either. And then there you have the bottom drops out, and all of a sudden lights go out in Wall Street throughout the United States, and the investors, the major insurance companies, mutual funds, all of that implodes from the inside. Okay? So what happened here? Thank you guys. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. So, thanks for my houses there. So what happened is, now on a global scale, we see the effects in the U.S. Gross domestic product, you can see from 2004, I just put the main years on there, 2004, 2009, 2014. You can see right in the middle of 2009 on each one, look at the unemployment rate for the United States in 2009, 9.9%. 2004, we had 5.4, and then back up to 2014, we're starting to go on the up and up now. Germany, gross domestic product 2009, negative 5.62%. Inflation, 2.63% was going up during that time we were in the recession. Unemployment was at its highest, since for a certain amount of time here. Creeped up to 7.66. 2014, you saw it just, it's getting better now. China, which you would think would not be affected so much, would maybe prosper during this time. Their GDP, 2007, 14.2% is great, but look at the inflation, 5.97% in 2008. And from 2008 to 2009, okay, they saw an increase in their unemployment rate. So the lessons learned here, I believe the Great Recession was not the cause of government policy, but a reaction from the lax standards contributing to the high levels of household debt, which in turn burst the real estate bubble and destabilized the economy on a global scale. Could it have been avoided? Possibly, if the Fed caught it just in time and raised the rates so that people weren't so greedy at that time, then we may have leveled off the economy at that time. Anyway, that's my presentation. Are there any questions? These are my references. Go ahead, Evan.
So, how would Germany prosper? I mean, how would China prosper more than Germany in our Great Depression? So how did they prosper, but Germany didn't in the Great Depression?
I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but there was I don't know how familiar you are with the Euro crisis, but Europe was going through a crisis pretty much at the same time we were going through the recession. The housing bubble just happened to be during that time as well. China, on the other hand, was part of the emerging Asian market. Go ahead.
If the Great Recession hadn't happened in 2008, where do you think we would be at now?
Can you repeat that one?
If the Great Recession hadn't happened in like 2008, where do you think we would be at now?
We'd be buying a lot more homes, right? No, I mean, honestly, if the recession never happened, I think the recession did some good for us. I think it humbled America and caused us to be less greedy. I can only speak from my own experience, but I'm definitely a lot more humble as a father, as a citizen, and a lot more frugal in spending my money now than before the recession.
The household savings actually has gone up because of the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. Colin has a question.
Go ahead.
Can you go a little bit further into detail about the responsible as opposed to the irresponsible people? Like when you were having your example earlier, like what was it that made the people irresponsible?
Yeah, really had to do responsible to get a mortgage. You have to go through a process now where they review your credit score, your credit rating, and they want to make sure that you're going to be able to make your payments. So they look at your employment history, things like that. Are you a U.S. citizen? Do you have documentation? They laxed their standards and said, you know what, I don't even need to know if you have employment history. I don't need to know what your credit score is. We're going to give you the money, and if you don't pay it back, well, that's your problem. Does that make more sense?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Have that agenda, so somebody have it?
Are you gonna be a professor now?
I'm gonna sit down. No, we're like,
Are you sick?
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Brianna, Jansen, if you have your handout, I want to have it. You'll be the last person to go because before you came in, we have already assigned this. I'll sign it.
My name is Felicia Dowg, and I did my project on the Fed thing. The Fed wants to increase interest rates. The last time that they did that was December last year. They were planning on doing it 4 times this year, but they haven't. wanted to do 2% annually. If they raise the interest rate slowly, they hope that expansion will continue. But if not, then we could possibly go into a recession again. In the September meeting, 9 out of 12 of the banks voted to raise the discount rate in favor of the interest rate. The last time the interest rate was raised was last December, like I said. And officials wanted to increase the benchmark interest rate 4 times. The Fed cut rates by 5% after the Great Recession, and they wanted to get the interest rate back to what it was before the Great Recession, but they don't think they're going to do that now. And one of the members of the Fed board said that the inflation would rise, but the number of people looking for work was a lot larger than they thought before going into it in September. This is a diagram of the inflation. You can see where it spiked up really high, and then down here is where it's at right now. But so the interest rate came down a lot, and then why they should increase the interest rate is because the economy is strong and steady right now, and they don't want to risk the economy going into recession and losing everything they've worked for. And inflation is slowly rising, so they want to avoid increasing inflation. But we also don't want to be too risky because our economy could take a downturn if we either increase the interest rate too fast or wait and see what happens. The gap between the market rate and the benchmark interest rate is extremely small right now. Why we shouldn't increase interest rate is because it may encourage excessive speculation in commercial real estate. Low interest rates could be beneficial to our economy, and if the rate rises too fast, it will hurt the economic expansion, and if they move too slow, it'll also hurt the economic expansion. We don't want to create another financial crisis, and there's a lot of questions in there, like unknown things that they have no way of knowing until they actually implement increasing the interest rate. And it's just difficult to see what the future holds if they waited to see or if they increased it slowly. But also they said with Trump that they're probably going to have to increase the interest rate regardless because of his plans for what he wants to do.
Okay, questions?
Okay.
So, have you been watching the news at all? Because I know they're talking about raising the rates.
Yeah, they said that December we're possibly gonna raise the rates, but they're still talking about it. They have to have a meeting in December, and then they're gonna decide whether or not they're going to do it. But they all have to be in favor. All the people on the board have to be in favor for it to happen. So.
Any other questions?
Do you think it would be smarter to leave the rates as they are or to increase them?
If we leave them as they are, then we could possibly go into recession again. So I think if they increase it slowly, like most of them want to, I think that'll be more beneficial for our economy.
Is there a set number of times they always raise the rates, or like you said 4?
Yeah, they wanted to do it 4 times this year, but there's not really a set number because they haven't increased them yet this year. So.
Do you know what the current interest rate is?
It's actually in my notes, but I can't think of it right now. I'll put it in my paper though for you, and then answer you.
I knew you answered that one. Do you know what they're trying to raise it to?
They want to raise it 2% annually and slowly get up to, all it said in my things was they wanted to raise it 2% annually. Like the, places I got all the information from.
But there's like a stopping point, right?
Yeah.
You can find out. Usually it's not very big
High.
jump. It's
Yeah.
like 0.0 something. We do it very slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
Thank you very much.
Oh.
Yeah, well, we have to move on. Yeah. You only have,
I was gonna ask you,
you can ask later, yeah. Yeah, two other students.
No.
I forgot why you had to lock off, because you could have used whatever that was on to pull out your, is it in your email?
It's in my PowerPoint, so I had to like log off and log onto
Okay.
my account.
What about Brianna? Do you,
Flash drive.
okay, good.
Just say that in your student account.
So the people who are presenting on Monday, next Monday, try to, when you come in, go ahead and, load up all your PowerPoint slides. Because we'll have 5 students presenting
Click use recommend.
next Monday. May not have enough time.
Okay, I'm Janae Green, and I am presenting student loans and debt. I chose to do this topic because many of us have student loans, and it was just an opportunity to look closely to see why it's increased and the advantages and disadvantages. First, a loan is it's money that's borrowed and that has to be paid back. So in the case of a student loan, money is borrowed for educational related expenses, tuition, room and board, meal plans, textbooks. Most lenders require first payment within 6 months after graduation. So some disadvantages and advantages. Advantages: prevent savings. Marriage and families are maybe put on hold. There's less money available to put down a down payment on a home or vehicle, and retirement may be hindered. Some advantages are education. You're becoming successful in higher level education, higher paying job positions. Okay. Increased student tuition, loans, and debt. Increased student loans are a result of higher education, credentialism, and credentialism is basically the reliance on credentials. Some employers will determine whether you're hired or promoted because of your credentials. Increased student tuition. There is inelastic demand, which is if there's a higher need for an education for a certain job, then this gives colleges reasons to raise their prices. For the economy, what it does to the economy, most of the economy is based on consumer spending. So if there's no consumption, then the economic growth has weakened. Student loan defaults are also harsh on the economy because if students fail to repay their loans, federal government takes a loss. So in conclusion, the disadvantages of student loans outweigh the advantages. Student debt not only places barriers on students, but there's a strain on the economy. So the primary goal should be to lower college tuition. And these are my references. Any questions?
Could you put it back on? Don't lock it out yet, yeah, leave it there. Okay, MC, you have a question.
Okay, if we were to like get rid of student loans or lower it, how would that affect like the rest of the economy? Like, would we have to pay by taxes, or I mean, how would that affect us?
So you said if we don't pay student loans?
Yeah, like if we were to like decrease the amount of student loans, like the how much you had to pay each year, like how would that affect the rest of us? Because that like goes to like what is it, like campus fees and like teachers, that pays the teachers and all that stuff. So how would we go about like paying them and all the rest of that?
I'm not sure, but I know the economy would grow because there's houses being bought, there's vehicles being bought, so the economy would increase that way, but I'm not sure about
Okay.
this individual.
So do you think it's possible for the American economy to live without like student loans? Like, is it possible to have like free college in the American economy?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
Canada.
Do you believe in the idea of that public colleges should be debt-free, like when you graduate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so my name is Brianna Dantzler, and I decided to compare countries' GDPs with the United States. I chose 4 other countries, excluding the United States. In 2009, the GDP for the United States was $144,718.58 billion. In 2014, the GDP was 17,348.08 billion dollars. Since the Great Recession, as you can see from the graph, from 2008 to 2009, it decreased. The GDP decreased because of unemployment or people being scared to invest in housing and the production costs going down, or production going down. From 2009 to 2014 and to the present, the United States GDP has risen slowly, but it has risen from what it was. That is because of the innovation in research and development, as well as more investment after the Great Recession. It did grow. The Obama administration did help with the GDP by making people feel more, by making people not scared to invest in certain aspects. The next country I decided to do was South Africa. I chose South Africa because it's one of the, I guess, my favorite countries from the African continent. Compared to the United States, it is not up to par with the United States. But in 2009, the GDP was 259.94 in U.S. Dollars, in billions. In 2014, it rose to $349.9 billion. South Africa is the second largest economy after Nigeria, and the economic system relies on trade. Most of the trade that it relies on is minerals, natural resources, and agricultural aspects. The South Africa has been experiencing a drought, which explains the decrease from 2012 to 2015, and that has been affecting the agriculture sector of the economy. Government spending is a huge factor in South Africa's GDP. They spend so much because the population itself is mostly poor and cannot afford to invest in like housing, and also I guess the unemployment rate goes in with that. The unemployment rate is really high. The debt is really large too because of the government spending, so that attributes to the GDP. The next country I decided to choose was Colombia. In 2009, the GDP was $233.82 billion, and in 2014, the GDP was $378.42 billion. Like South Africa, it depends heavily on the exports that they have. Same with the mining and energy exports. They're the fourth largest coal exporter in the world, and they're Latin America's fourth largest oil producer. The government revenue is declining because of the declining oil prices, which is affecting, well, it really isn't affecting the GDP, but it kind of does. There has been a so-called war going on with the government and the FARC, which is a guerrilla warfare group. They're angry with the taxes, and that does take a role on GDP because people are not they don't want to help the government with anything, and they're fighting against the government. They have made a peace deal. From what I've read, it's recently, I guess, been broken because somebody was killed from the other side, and they had put that peace deal they have made that peace deal because it was supposed to help boost the GDP, or they wanted it to help boost the GDP. And the foreign policy that Colombia has was put in place to help boost investment within the country. The next country I chose is Germany. In 2009, the GDP was $3,418.01 billion, and in 2014, the GDP was $3,868.29 billion. Like the U.S., the rest of the world did feel some impact with a financial crisis. Not like largely, but Germany, because they're part of the European Union, they did feel part of it because of what was going on over there. Like I said, they're part of the Eurozone, and they rely on their exports and imports as well. They're one of the leading, they are the most profitable country in Europe that from exports with the other countries in the European zone. A downside to being a part of the European zone is being affected by other countries like Greece, how they were having problems with their economy, and that's lowering the, I guess, inflation, and also having an effect on exporting and importing. The last country that I chose was South Korea. In 2009, South Korea was, their GDP was $901.93 billion, and in 2014, it was $1,411.33 billion. Like South Africa and Colombia, exporting was a big factor in the rise of their GDP. The biggest things that they export are the Hyundai cars and Samsung, and they're one of they're Asia's top gasoline exporter. And along with all the other Asian countries, as of 2014-2015, they're experiencing a slowdown, which could cause a deficit or a surplus, and they're worried about that and trying to keep their GDP up. In conclusion, all the excuse my messing up of the words. All of the countries were affected by the Great Recession. From my research, most of the countries rely on exports and investments, and South Africa, Colombia, and South Korea are all examples of that. And the next highest to the U.S. is Germany. And from this graph, you can't see South Africa, but it's underneath this purple line. All right, any questions?
Yeah, so how did the peace treaty between Colombia and the warfare people, how is that gonna help the GDP?
They didn't really explain it much, I guess, because you have more people not trying to fight against the government, and more people making money to invest in like housing and other aspects of the government. Like they were fighting because of taxes, and they just felt the government wasn't good for the people. So yeah, that's really all the information that I found on that. It's like a whole different section. Any other questions?
We'll take one more question. Okay, well, any questions? Last chance. If not, thank you very much for presenting. If you finish your write-up for today's peer review, please put it up front, do not give it to me. I would like to talk to the 4 people who are presenting. I'll comment it based on the order of presenting. Have a great Thanksgiving holiday. I'll see you next Monday.
You want all the